And luckily, I had purchased some investment properties along the way. I didn't have enough to replace my W-2 income, not by a long shot, but I got a taste of that passive investing. And so that's how I got into the real estate world. I was a scientist. It didn't have the ability to produce the revenue that I wanted to make with my life. So I moved on.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast, Passive Investing Edition. My name's Randy Smith, and I will be your host today. And I'm really excited to have Mark Updegraff with us here on the show today. Mark has been in real estate since 2008. He is a broker, he is a developer, he is a redeveloper, and he also helps bring investor capital to additional deals. So Mark, welcome to the show. Excited to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Randy. It was really great to meet you over that LinkedIn challenge. So thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
That's right. That's right. I was just thinking, and that's another one of those is coming up here shortly, which for the listeners who don't know, there is a really cool LinkedIn challenge that a friend of ours, Yona Weiss, does that will absolutely consume every minute of your day for about a week, but it's really, really fun and you get to meet a lot of fun people. But anyways, I digress. So Mark, let's do, as we always do at the beginning of these podcasts, can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and walk us through your journey to passive investing?
Yeah. So I came from an entrepreneurial family. My father started just hauling for somebody else. So he hauled a dump truck and he knew that in his blood that he wanted to be an entrepreneur. His father had a farm, but unfortunately passed away when he was younger. So he didn't really have that mentorship that luckily I got from him. And he just grinded it out for years and years and years as a solopreneur, right? He bought his first truck and, he operated that truck as a subcontractor for various different companies like Pepsi-Cola, et cetera. And it wasn't until I went to college that he had the financial ability to start hiring people. And since I've been in college to today, he's expanded his business. He's got quite a few number of drivers. He's got a lot of power units and trailers. And so I really kind of watched him grow his business from the ground up just through sweat and tears, really. And, I got to give him a lot of credit for helping me along the way, especially when it comes to real estate. He didn't have any real estate background. None of my family had any real estate background. And they were always of the mantra, go to school, get a good job. That was for me and my sisters, that was their main concern. They wanted to make sure we had a quality education and that when we came out, we could get a pretty decent job. And so I followed that guidance. But along the way, I had a lot of side hustles that I did. And I always was kind of bit by the entrepreneurial spirit. And I really didn't like clocking in and clocking out and being a slave to somebody else. And really, I didn't think I was getting paid what my time was worth. And so I always had that in the back of my head. And, I went through school, got my undergraduate degree, a bachelor's of science, which is a good degree from a good institution. And I got an okay job, but I wasn't happy with the wages. And I worked in industry for a couple of years and was just like, I want more for my life. So I went back and I got another degree thinking that, okay, with an advanced degree, I'm going to be good. I'll be good. I'll be happy and everything will be great. Well, I did make a little more money, but it really wasn't what I was expecting as far as a career path. And so I talked to the scientists that I was working with, and they said, hey, if you don't get into management, you're going to be capped out. You're never going to make more than 100 grand. We've been here our entire careers, and we've given the company all this IP that we've created, and they've made millions, if not billions of dollars on it, and they really don't care. But if you're in management, you can hobnob your way up the ladder and you could be making $500,000 by the time you retire. And, I was never really into that kind of managerial. I always consider it like almost like a fluff job where it was more just about talking to people and who you knew versus actually getting stuff done. Because those managers would come to us as the scientists and we'd say, hey, we've got a novel idea. We can increase revenue based on this concept, but we're going to have to develop it first and we're going to need some money to do that. No, we're not going to give you the money to do that. We've got a system that's working. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't even worry about it. And The aha moment I had was where one of my good friends that I had made while I was working in industry, he was an older gentleman and he was a scientist that had been working in this project for about 25, 30 years. And when he was doing that, he did the project himself. He really had no support. So I'd go to his lab and it would just be him. And I said, hey, this is kind of disheartening. Where are all the people to support you? And he's like, yeah, it's just me over here. I'm coding all this. He was responsible for $500 million contracts that our company received every year. And if you can imagine how many jobs are attached to that $500 million that come in. So, we had a few heart-to-hearts, and he ended up going to Raytheon because I think I made him upset that he wasn't making more money, given that he was instrumental in this program they were running. And when he left and went to our competitor, the contract went to our competitor the next year because nobody could pick up the pieces of what he was doing internally. He had written all this code for years, and nobody could debug it, nobody could run it. And they laid off thousands of people in Rochester and people in other cities that were all tied to this one contract. And so when that happened, I was like, look, I need to take the bull by the horns and I need to figure out what is my trajectory. I want to do this myself. And luckily, I had purchased some investment properties along the way. I didn't have enough to replace my W-2 income, not by a long shot, but I got a taste of that passive investing. It was more active investing because I was still the property manager and, I was still wearing a lot of hats. But my goal was to build that out and to take off hats and put them on other people as I grew and as I had more revenue and I had more cash flow. And so that's how I got into the real estate world. I was a scientist, and it didn't have the ability to produce the revenue that I wanted to make with my life. So I moved on.
This is Chad Ackerman, founder of Left Field Investors, and I'm inviting you to listen to our podcast, The LFI Spotlight. Tired of the Wall Street roller coaster? Discover how to invest in real assets as I interview syndicators, seasoned passive investors, and other experts every week. We'll help you learn about cash flowing syndications, bringing you closer to financial freedom. Visit leftfieldinvestors.com to listen to the podcast, subscribe to our newsletter, and connect with like-minded passive investors. Join us today.
Clearly educated, intellectual, very smart guy that probably is not afraid of working. From what I can tell, you don't just go back and get another higher level degree, very, very easily. So interesting. And it's neat how it sounds like you had some really important influencers in your life, your family member, and then also some other folks that were much further down the path than you were. And I think that's a really good point for investors to take a look at, or for individuals that are in the W-2, like take a look at people that have been doing what you're doing for 5, 10, 15, even 20 years longer, and ask yourself that question. Like, is this something that you want to be doing? And is that the life you want in 20 years? Or do you want to go out there like you did yourself, Mark, and just kind of forge your own way into this? So, thanks for kind of pointing that out. I think that's really important for the listeners to really kind of dig into it. I love this thing where you said at the end, you essentially were restless and irritable in your role because you saw where you were going. And then you probably started doing some research and you found this other avenue and you found active investing, and you used the term take off my hats and put them on other people. I really like that because I'm a big advocate of the who, not how mentality. So thank you for that. I think that was really good. But I'm curious, how did you figure out that first investment? What was the first investment? What did it look like? And what did that lead to?
Yeah, so I think I've always kind of had this instinctual ability to find a spot that's going to be in the path of progress. Right. And so I'm not just buying willy-nilly, but I'm looking at local trends, and a lot of it's going to have to do with city initiatives. It'll have to do with private initiatives, and then just mom and pop investors that are going into a space and they're trying to improve the space, bring up the quality of tenant, and clean up the streets, if you will. They're putting fresh paint on the exterior and they're improving the units, with maybe some new kitchens and bathrooms and stuff like that. So they might be in an area that on average is a little repressed, but they're trying to make their mark. And so by finding that area, I said, hey, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to plant my flag here. I know that there's still crime. I know that there's still drug activity, but I can see that there's other people that are also getting involved in this area. And then there's also other local businesses that are trying to establish themselves, from eateries to bars to small shops. And that's how I positioned my first investment. And then I pivoted on both sides of that, right? So I went into some riskier neighborhoods and didn't really like the results that I was getting there. So I quickly came back to my original philosophy. And then since then, I've even gone the other direction where I've come into, a class A neighborhood where I'm paying a premium. I'm definitely paying a premium to be in that neighborhood. But what I tell people is, until you operate the property and file your tax return, a pro forma is just a best guess as to what's going to happen. And so by really carefully tracking my Schedule E's and looking at how location plays a factor in things like bad debt, vacancy rates, repairs, capital improvements, et cetera, I understood that not all pro formas are created equal. And, rather than sit there and tweak every single lever to find a deal, I use the same exact pro forma across the board. And then I use my field knowledge to make a buy decision. So I can say, okay, it's a gross rent multiplier of whatever, and it's a cap of whatever. I know historically, it's in line, and now I'm making the buy decision because it's got a new roof, it's got a new furnace, it's got vinyl siding. Those are my decision makers, because you're not really paying a huge premium for those in the marketplace. If you're looking at the same type of house, next door to each other, let's say it's a 3-bed, 1-bath. One's got new vinyl siding, one's got a new roof, one's got a new furnace. They don't trade for the disparity between the cost of those improvements, right? They might trade for a couple $1,000s difference when the cost to do that might be 50 or 60,000. So I'm going to look for that opportunity, and I'm going to grab those, and I'm going to be aggressive, even if I have to go above what the asking price is and beat out a few people. I would rather have that. I call it the little old lady house. I'd rather have that house than the house that's been tore up and used as a rental for the last 50 years and just really not doing well.
I love it. I love it. So yeah, kind of going back to this path of progress idea. What's the Wayne Gretzky saying? Go where the puck's gonna be, not where it is right now. And it sounds like you've really, through your knowledge of the geographies and the regions that you're working in, where that puck's going to be, and you want to get ahead of it so you can be there when that happens. So yeah, that's really cool. And I like that idea and the concept of, well, the little old lady idea, but the specifically, like, putting a new roof on might cost $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, but you're not going to get $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 more if you sell that thing. Generally, what I've found in my experience is those CapEx expenses generally will help houses sell quicker, but not necessarily for more. So I think that's a really good watch out as well. Let the other investors do the CapEx on those, or the little old lady, and then you come in, buy it for a comp similar to it, and save all that money, time, effort, energy, all of that kind of stuff. So that's interesting. So it sounds like you've been heavily involved in single family, just based on where the conversation has gone. But I believe you mentioned you're doing a lot of other things now as well. So what does that look like in recent years for you?
Yeah. So I've just worked my way up from the beginning, right, with a single family house. And I've always known that I want to increase my unit count. And the only way to do that is to get more doors under one roof, right? So my whole mantra as I was buying stuff was try to buy bigger and bigger properties. And a lot of that comes down to how you structure your financing and how you do your deals. So there are ways where you can accelerate your unit count by maybe you purchase with some private money. If you can get a good relationship with somebody that's willing to loan you at a decent rate, you might not get this lucky, but maybe 8% or something like that. And, you buy it, you do a little bit of value add, and then maybe a year and a half later, you take it to a bank, and the bank values it at maybe 150% of what you've got into it. And so you end up walking out with a check bigger than your payoff. Right. So you pay off your guy, you cash flowed it the whole time, and you're actually walking away with a little bit more money than you started. And so as long as I take that cash and I don't just spend it on stupid stuff like cars and parties or whatever, I reinvest it into some kind of asset that's going to make more money. I've always followed that model. And so, I've got a certain nut that I'm rolling, and the bigger the nut gets, the bigger the property I'm able to take down. So that's kind of my limiting fact as far as what I can achieve personally. And then if you want to do things bigger, then you can start working either in like joint ventures, or you can start doing some syndications.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So you kind of are following the stack method. You're buying more and more properties, ultimately more doors under one roof at that point, and then taking your capital from essentially your burring, but larger properties. It sounds like so.
Yeah.
So what's the end game or kind of the next phase of what you're shooting for? Are you shooting for more houses, more doors, more apartments, more commercial? Like where are you going to next? I would like to say where are you going ultimately, but I don't think anybody knows where they're going 10 years from now ultimately. But yeah, so
Yeah.
what's kind of next for you?
Yeah. So over the last 15 years, I've painstakingly built this property management company. And property management it's one of those thankless jobs. And it seems like it should be easy, but it's anything but. And because I've invested so much time building these systems and processes and building my personnel and my staff, I'm really looking forward to being able to leverage those guys and scale, right? And be able to be vertically integrated into some of these bigger deals that I do with other people, either as joint venture or syndication. So I'm really proud of what we've accomplished and what we've established. And we're looking forward to the next chapter being taking all of our baselines and then just scaling those appropriately to keep up with our incoming unit count.
You spent a lot of years building systems and a team, and now it's time to set them free and put them out there to kind of drive value to more people. So how many, like, what's the property management group look like today? How many people, how many properties are you property managing today? What's that look like?
Yeah, so we go up and down on unit counts. Early on, we would take on some C-class units that we've since decided weren't part of our vision. We need owners that align with our vision for the community. And sometimes when you get into those Class C, the owners just don't have the same vision. So right now, we're currently at like 400 units. That's after offboarding about 100, 150 C-class units. And now we know it's a slower game on the A and B units. Most of those guys self-manage, so we're growing slowly. But I'd tell you, without too much marketing effort, we're putting on anywhere between 10 and 15 units a month, which is really nice. We're at about 400 doors under management right now, and I'm looking forward to increasing my portfolio as well. And I treat my units just like any other owner would have their units treated, right? So I put my stuff in LLCs, and the LLCs are treated just like an independent owner. And so if there's any pain in the system, I can feel that pain and I can make corrections with our systems and processes. And it's been a really good model.
So the property management has 400 doors, and how many doors do you own personally?
I'm under 100, but getting close to 100.
Wow, unbelievable! Congratulations. So I've always thought about third-party property management and what that looks like. And for the listener, generally you see 100-unit apartment complexes. They're large enough to where you can have somebody on site. If you've got two 50s or a 40 and a 60 next to each other, maybe they can share those resources. But if you're under 50 or even under 70 or so, you've got to lean on a guy like Mark and his team to manage those properties. And the question that always comes to mind to me is, if I'm bringing a property to your property management team and I know about a quarter of the units are yours, my guess is those 100 that are yours are going to get preferential treatment or get favored when it comes to leasing and repairs and whatever that is. And maybe that's just a limiting mindset that I have, but I'm curious, that question has to come up. And how do you broach that with potential folks that are coming on board?
Sure. It actually doesn't come up really ever. And I would tell you honestly that I probably get the worst treatment because they know that I'm easy to work with, right? So if something
you're
breaks,
not going anywhere, right?
Yeah. If something breaks and it needs fixed, like they don't need to call me and say, "Hey, this broke. It's going to be $500." Da, da, da. They just fix it, right? So I'm an easy owner for them because if it's up to me to like crack the whip on them on my units. And they know I'm busy. And so like, I trust that they're doing their job, which they are. And I don't micromanage them in that way. Right? I still check up with them just like any other owner would, like, "Hey, how's the rent coming in? How's my tenant doing?" But as far as preferential treatment, there's so much going on. There'd be no way for them to really do that, right? Because as a
Got it.
property manager, you're almost like a firefighter. It's things light on
Sure.
fire. You got this hose, and you're just constantly putting out whatever's on fire. So me not being a squeaky wheel, none of my stuff's ever on fire unless it literally is on fire,
Yeah.
which is pretty rare.
Right. And it's probably a good point too. Like the best type of tenant is the guy who says, when the property management comes to me and says they want to fix something, I let them fix it. And more often than not, if you're keeping up on CapEx and you're taking care of, what can turn into deferred maintenance, generally tenants are going to be fairly happy and continue to pay rent if you're getting the right assets. So that's a good lesson. And thank you for kind of walking me through that. I'm surprised to hear that doesn't come up, but the way that you explained it, it makes perfect sense that it wouldn't. So, interesting. Okay. And now you're in the northeast of the country, right? I believe you're in, where are you located specifically?
Rochester, New York.
Okay. And is your whole portfolio within X amount of miles of some radius? Is it fairly close or?
Yeah, I've got a couple properties outside of the state, but 95% of my holdings are in Rochester, in the city proper. And then I try to be clustered together. So I would tell you all of my properties are within a couple miles of each other.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, it looks like, we're already at about 20 minutes, but I'd really like to dig in and kind of get your perspective for the new or newer passive investor, the guy who is, maybe a high-income W-2 guy or, maybe there's doctors, lawyers, sales guys, whatever that is. They've got extra capital to place into deals. Like, what kind of advice would you give those folks that are looking into getting into the space? Do you think it makes sense to start out active, or does it make sense just to jump in passive?
That's a really good question. It's going to depend on them, right, and what their capacity is to add extra work onto their plate. I definitely don't think it's a bad idea to do something actively just to have an appreciation for what goes into it. But certainly, if it's a waste of your time to do it because you're making so much money doing your other craft, then it probably isn't the best. What you want to focus your time on is vetting the people that you're going to work with. And so I think the best owners that I work with, they'll sit down with me, they'll sit down with my staff, and they'll do it on a regular basis, right? So I've got one of my VIP clients is flying in next week, and he just, will randomly text me and say, "Hey, Mark, I'm going to be in town next Monday. You want to grab lunch?" And, I'll sit down, I'll have lunch with him. We'll be able to catch up. We'll talk about the marketplace. We'll talk about, whatever, our lives, and then obviously his properties. And then, he'll come in and he'll meet with the staff, and he'll check in with Carol Ann, and he'll check in with Mark, and he'll have some FaceTime with them. And I think that goes a long way, right? If you're the kind of person that is, empowering the people that you're hiring because you've vetted them, you've talked to them, you understand what they do and how they do it, and you just want them to do a good job. Having a little bit of that FaceTime is going to go a long way. And then just, keeping up with them. My people like to be proactive. That's one of the things that we've, tried to build into the management company from the beginning, is to have as much communication back to the owners as possible, which sometimes can be difficult, right? Because you are the firefighter going out and putting out all these fires. And if you're spending a lot of time on client relations, then that's less time that you have to put out fires. So having a division in the property management company that can be a little bit higher level, where they're still very integrated with the people that are in the field and can have that knowledge base on a global property management level as far as all the units, and have that liaison that can talk to people, but then also have them be able to drill down one level deeper into the organization and talk to people that are in the field and that know the tenants really well. I mean, that's going to go a long way, right? Because things happen in property management. And if you are looking at it from afar and you're not really involved with the management and something goes wrong, it's really easy to be like, oh, it's the property manager. It's like they totally screwed up. They owe me. They're terrible, blah, blah, blah. But if you've got that relationship with them and you know that they're trying really hard and they're doing everything in their power to make you money and to keep you happy and to also keep your tenant happy, then when something goes wrong, you're like, okay, I get it. Things go wrong every once in a while. And I can see, because I've been talking to you, consistently over the months, that it wasn't something that you did necessarily. It's just a bad luck thing happens.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate the fact that you do make your staff available to investors, because not all property managers do. They'll have like a contact point person who is kind of the face of the property management company. So that is good. Yeah, so I'm curious from a different perspective, when you see new investors that are interested in meeting with you, like what types of things do you see them doing from a vetting standpoint that you think are good ideas? And what type of things from a vetting standpoint do you think maybe are wasted time or not really going to share any information? Like, are there things that jump out to you?
Sure. The best things that people do are say, hey, I want to go see some of the properties that you manage. And, maybe they don't have anything managed with us currently. And so we'll take them and show them some properties, a good sampling of different areas, different locations. If they're, specifically looking to invest in a particular neighborhood, then we'll take them to see properties in that neighborhood, right? So they can get a feel for the demographic, the tenant base, the condition of the property, not just on a per property basis, but on like a street basis or a block basis or a neighborhood basis. And so those guys that are jumping into the field and looking at stuff, they're going to do really, really well. So I would say that's a really good thing. People that don't do as well are the people that are really just so focused on the numbers that they won't listen to the advice of the professionals, right? And so what I learned early on was if I chase cash flow and that's my sole goal, I'm going to end up in an asset class that's not going to perform the way that I would hope it would. But if I trade off a little bit of that, pro forma cash flow, I can position myself in a blue collar neighborhood where I've got very low bad debt, if any. I've got a longer standing tenants, right? They'll renew instead of turning over. And, my Schedule E just looks amazing versus, oh no, I need to buy the $30,000 unit because I'm going to make more money. When I'm saying it's going to be more deferred, you're going to have more CapEx, you're going to have more bad debt. They don't listen. It's all about the numbers because when you show them the alternative of this blue collar neighborhood, it's not a good enough deal, right? And so being transparent as their broker or their mentor or whatever they want to call me, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink at the end of the day. So I give them the options. I tell them what I would do, and sometimes they'll still make a different decision. And it'll sometimes be comical. Like I had some clients from Canada that I have a really great relationship with. They love me. I love them. They ended up selling all of their houses. And I would tell you, it comes down to the fact that they didn't listen to me. And when they were buying these things and they would say, hey, Mark, what do you think about this one? And then they would laugh and they'd say, oh, I know what you think about this one. You wouldn't buy it, blah, blah, blah. Here's why you wouldn't buy it. And now they're exiting. They've owned them for less than 5 years and they've got to exit. And, they might have made a little bit of money, but had they listened to me, they could have made some really good money.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So trust the expert is what I'm hearing. Definitely. Very
Yeah,
good.
well, you're subject to a marketplace, right? And
Sure.
when people are trying to sell stuff, unfortunately, they might try to sell you a bad bag of goods, right? I am
Yep.
trying to be transparent and say, look, you got options. Yeah, sure, we can chase this cash flow, but the reality is it's not going to pencil out. Come over here to the middle of the road. Oh, but the middle of the road, I can do better somewhere else. I can go to a different
Yeah.
market. This other guy says he has a better deal. It's like, okay, is it really a better deal though? Are you running everything the same? Are you looking at everything the same? Like, I know this works and I'm not going to sugarcoat it and lie to you to get you into it. And so like, I kind of feel like it's tough. It's just really, really tough.
Okay. So I'm curious, do you provide turnkey opportunities to your investors or do you just simply help manage properties after they buy them and get them renovated? Or how much are you involved in that process?
Yeah, so I've trained my agents to be able to underwrite stuff for them and to help them on the pro forma side. So we do try to provide turnkey solutions, right? Sometimes we'll have owners that are selling for whatever reason. A lot of times it's after they've done the heavy lifting, right? So it might be one of these investors that didn't listen to me, bought a unit, and then it was like capex, repair, vacancy, turnover, whatever. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And then they sell it. It's been 5 years, but they've invested another $40,000 of capex into the property, and they just want to be done with it. And so now the next investor can get in. It's got a new roof, it's got new windows, and now they can operate it. And I'll even tell them when they're exiting, I'll be like, dude, you've done the hard lifting. Just now it's stabilized. Just ride it out from here. And now I don't want to do it. I just want to sell it. So, those can be opportunities, but we're always looking for any kind of opportunity, even if it's not a value add, even if it's just a straight, hey, it's got a tenant, but it's priced right. Maybe we have it off markets and we can control it's not getting bid up. But we run a conservative pro forma, and if it makes money, it makes money. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. So I was initially a turnkey investor, and then I moved over to the Burr strategy myself. And I'm probably the guy like you're referencing that did all the heavy work and then got out of them after a handful of years. But I will also say my turnkey experience was nowhere near what it sounds like you provide. So my experience is there are really good sales guys out there doing turnkey solutions. And then there are really, really good operators out there that provide excellent turnkey opportunities for their investors. And it sounds like you're probably one of the latter. So thank you for that. I think it's a great way to get into this space. And it's as passive as you can be in an active environment, I think, when you have a good operator like yourself, Mark. So yeah, good stuff. Well, very good. Well, let's, if we can, let's jump kind of into the last portion of the podcast here. How can our listeners find you, and what is the best way to support you and your group?
Yep. So I'm at razecapital.com. It's RAZE capital.com. So they can reach out there. They can certainly shoot me a text on my cell. It's 585-314-9790, 585-314-9790. And either way, I'll get back to them.
Yeah. And very specifically, you are providing property management, brokerage in the specific geography that you shared. And you're also raising some capital from folks are they your deals or for other people's deals as well, or?
For my deals, yeah. I've been in Rochester so long, I just know it. And luckily I've got a lot of good contacts here. And so I'm working on some of these old timers that are getting ready to retire. You know, they're getting into their late 80s, and some of them don't have any kind of succession plan. Their kids don't want anything to do with it, and they're ready to get out. So those are the ones that I'm currently working on right now. I'm sticking with Class A value add, so it should be kind of like a Burr situation.
Nice. And I suspect there's some owner financing in your future if there's not already,
correct.
Right?
That's right. Yep.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Well, very good. So to the new or newer passive investor, any books or podcasts that you might suggest that they consider taking a look at?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great ones. I recently got into the commercial real estate podcasting sphere of listening to all these people. So once you listen to one, you'll research the guest, and then, the guest has probably been on some other ones, or maybe the guest is actually a host. And so you just go down the rabbit trail and then find the people that you resonate with. And so I really, rather than I do subscribe to a lot of different podcasts, but I'm looking for people that are doing what I want to be doing. And I'm trying to figure out what shows they've been on and listen to those. That's kind of my methodology.
Yeah, that's such great advice as well. I can give you the top 5 that I listen to, but it's really specific podcasts with certain guests on it, and then I go deep on those guests as well. So, yeah, really good advice. And then kind of a fun question I like to ask everybody, is there a recent bucket list item you've checked off your list, or one you're hoping to in the near future?
Well, recently we went to Guatemala and we did we went for swordfish, sailfish, and then we got a lot of mahi-mahi. And so that was the first time that I'd been on a boat that could handle some larger fish. So that was really, really cool. That was definitely on my bucket list. And then for a future bucket list, I've always wanted to just do a little bit of stand-up comedy. So I've been working on some stuff, and I think I'll just put something together and then just do it and see what happens, just for fun.
So not to put you on the spot, but should we test something right here, do you think? Or
No.
We'll save it for another episode.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll
very good. Very good. Well, I'll circle back to hear how that goes, but that's fun from big, deep sea fishing over to comedy. I've not heard that twist before. So very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. I think it's you bring a very unique perspective to the audience that I've not shared with the audience yet. So thank you so much for being on the show. I think you brought just a ton of value.
Awesome. Thanks, Randy. I really appreciate it.
All right. And to our listeners, as always, we encourage you to continue the education and the inspiration process all the way up to the point where it's finally time to make a decision and invest in that first deal. We're so confident that once you do, you will continue to shift more and more of your capital over to the real estate investing space, and that will ultimately help you decrease your dependence on your W-2. So until next Thursday, when we have another great show with another exciting guest, Thank you for listening, and we'll look forward to having you next Thursday as well. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.